DeAndre Hopkins, the wake-up call finally came for him. The Cardinals, who announced on Friday they were going to release him, officially did it on Tuesday. We talked about this yesterday. There's still a little window that maybe he would be traded. Maybe somebody would show up with an offer. The Cardinals would pay some of the contract and they would get something back. If any of that happened yesterday, it obviously didn't work. He's released. He's a free agent. He can sign with any team at any time. No waivers for vested veterans, anybody who's been around 4 years or longer. Waivers don't apply until after the trade deadline in late October, early November. So he is free and clear. He can sign with anybody, Chris. And I think the other big development today, that dovetails with things we were discussing yesterday, he needed an NFLPA certified agent.
Right.
He got one. He hired one. NFL Network reported yesterday, Kelton Crenshaw, based in Cleveland, has been hired by DeAndre Hopkins, which means teams will reach out to him, talk to the agent to try to work out a possible deal. And the agent will preside over this effort to maybe play one against the other. This is a hell of an opportunity. You get the Chiefs and the Bills at the table, and you've got the net gain of getting him and the extra net gain of keeping him from a team that you're going to be competing with for the AFC Championship. So the delta, as they call it, is even more significant because it's not just what bump does he give us, it's what negative bump do we enjoy by having him not go to the other team.
Agreed, yeah.
It's hard for him to do it because let me tell you, I'm not going to name names, but one of the teams regarded to be significantly in the running for DeAndre Hopkins was not comfortable with the prospect of dealing with St. Omni, the non-certified agent. You've got multiple emails out there or memos from the league saying, don't deal with these people who are certified by the union. And it was going to make it harder for DeAndre Hopkins to get the best possible deal because teams did not want to deal with St. Omni. They were going to have to deal directly with DeAndre Hopkins. And that's the thing. So many of these guys who are self-represented really aren't. They just have somebody who isn't part of the NFLPA structure, so they don't have to pay them under the same rate schedule that NFLPA certified agents are paid. So they act like they're doing it themselves and they aren't. Like Laramie Tunsil, he acts like he's doing it himself. He's not. And he's basically admitted it. And the NFL has an obligation and the union has an obligation to enforce the rules. And so that's why they're shying away from St. Omni. They only want to deal with DeAndre Hopkins. And once Hopkins realizes, I got to do this myself, no thank you, I guess I'll go get an NFLPA certified agent.
Right, yeah, I hear it. Well, you do save money, right? Like Pete is in my ear going, wait, so how do they save money for everybody else? And he's right. We should explain that, right? Because you could go, hey, help me out with this process. I'll give you a flat rate of $100,000 or $50,000, and then it's done.
Pay by the hour.
Exactly, or
hour.
that, exactly. So it's still less than the 3% of the ultimate contract that you're going to get there, and it's a win for the player. Now, it might not be a win for the player when there's a lot of moving parts and something like this, like you're talking about with DeAndre Hopkins, right? And that's where you're right. I think it is the right thing for him to get the agent. He's at a point of his career where, hey, we know it's kind of on the downhill part here. It's crucial for him. He wants to find a place that not only makes sense for him to set him up for success statistically, but he wants to win. We know that. He's kind of made that clear. And that's where it is going to be interesting as we go down the stretch here. I mean, I think it is going to be a top team market, I feel like, with DeAndre Hopkins. Like we said yesterday, I don't see him going, oh, wait, I'll take an extra $1 million or $2 million to go play with the Carolina Panthers or some team that we don't envision that really is in a Super Bowl window. Like you said, I think it's going to be top-tier teams, Chiefs, Bills. Those are the teams we're talking about. Teams that are looking at it going, wait, we're a Super Bowl team. What gets us over the hump to be, now we feel like we're like a Super Bowl winning football team? And I think that's what the Bills and Chiefs are interested in. The big thing, Mike, with me and DeAndre Hopkins, or Nook as they call him, right, is what are his expectations? What does he want? How many years of a contract does he want? What kind of guarantees is he looking at? That's, to me, where it's going to get tricky. Or is this just going to be a one-year rental type of thing, and then he's going to try to set himself up? And that's where I don't have a great feel for what he's expecting quite yet.
Well, and this takes me back to when we first heard the noise about a potential trade. I'm thinking he wants to take the back end of this $27 million per year new money deal where he has gotten the bulk of the cash.
Right.
We're getting to a back end, which doesn't entail as much, 19.45 million this year. He wants more. He doesn't want to just have his contract sent to another team and have someone else pay the money the Cardinals were going to pay. He wants more. He sees what Devontae Adams got. He sees what Tyreek Hill got. He was not long ago the highest paid receiver in football. He wants more. And then the question became, is anyone even going to give him what he's due to make? Now that he's a free agent, we see what someone is willing to do.
Yeah.
And it may not be even close to what he got or was supposed to get from the Cardinals. And there could be a delay here.
Yeah.
This may be a situation where it takes time. And I think I may have mentioned this yesterday. For the teams, they have negotiated contracts over and over and over again with every shape and size and personality type of player. They know when to wait. They know when to move. They know when to step back and let the player come to terms with the fact that he's not going to get what he thinks he should get. But where the dynamic changes here, and this is why it's important to have an agent who can orchestrate everything. And by the way, you can negotiate the 3% down, and there are some agents who will only take 1%.
That's right.
Still, if you're talking about a flat fee or a per hour rate, you still can save money by doing it on your own. And you also create this impression to the world that you're this great business person who handles stuff on his own, even if he really isn't, even if the truth is he's got somebody helping him while he takes credit publicly for being this Renaissance man who can play football and also negotiate his own deal with no help from anyone whatsoever. And a lot of that is just a ruse. A lot of it's scam. A lot of it is fugazi. Mostly the guys who claim they're representing themselves have someone else who isn't an NFLPA agent representing them. But in this case, you need someone who's got relationships, who knows people,
right,
and who read this needle, because there is a way to play this. Just like, I don't want to say just like Deshaun Watson, because it was a different situation, but the similarity is this. You get teams to the table. Get them to the table, create a sense of competition, a sense of scarcity. Everybody's fighting for the Cabbage Patch Kid. That was the big toy in the 80s, and everybody had to have it, and they would fight over it, right? Beanie Babies, when they were a big deal 35 years ago. I got to go get it. I got to have it. That's how Deshaun Watson got his contract. Jimmy Haslam decided I had to have him. Oh, they don't want us? Well, offer him more. Offer him a fully guaranteed contract. Do what it takes. Whatever it takes. I want him. That's the mindset that this agent is going to try to create. So you got the Chiefs and the Bills that we know are interested. Get more teams at the table. Chris, like the Browns, the Ravens. Try to find somebody from the NFC. We talked about the Lions yesterday. Maybe them. Get 5 or 6 teams that decide they need to have DeAndre Hopkins. And then you just kind of step back, puppet master a little bit, step back, and you wait for somebody to get sufficiently desperate, and you get the kind of numbers that DeAndre Hopkins is looking for. May not work, but that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. It is the way to work. And I think that's the way to work if he wants to maximize, what his earnings are. The question I throw out there is a guy like you and me who follows football and, follows all these teams and talks about it in depth is, what is the market for DeAndre Hopkins? What exactly, what are we talking about? Again, like we talked about, guaranteed money, yearly average, the amount of years on the contract, I think are all going to be a big deal here for a guy that's, year 10 playing receiver, and we've hit on it. I know PEDs, injuries, right? All of that added on top of this too, where I'll say he's different than OBJ as well, where OBJ was just a 1-year rental, but OBJ is viewed in the NFL as a separation guy. OBJ is viewed as a guy that hey, he can run a go route and still 80 yards, touchdown. He can get a slant route and make one move and be gone. That's not DeAndre Hopkins. They're usually not valued the same as that guy like an OBJ. Now, OBJ has the injury. I know all of that. I get it. But that's where I think the Hopkins thing is interesting too. Because I watch film, that. People hear me talk about him on my podcast and stuff, but you talk to coaches around football too. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is the type of receiver anymore that scares people. He's not that guy anymore. He's more of, hey, we got to put him in the right spot, and he knows how to run routes, and he's got great hands, and, he'll make the play. But you're not necessarily going to get yak or 80-yard touchdowns and stuff like that. And that, to me, is, again, another interesting part of the market for DeAndre Hopkins and getting a feel for this situation.
And then you've got the other side of it too. All of the chatter from the unnamed sources, all the negativity about DeAndre Hopkins that wasn't out there before.
Right.
But now, we talked about this yesterday. It started with, oh, the Cardinals were upset because he didn't play the last two games of the 2022 season because he was healthy and he claimed he was injured. And we're salty about that. There's other stuff that's coming out. I saw an item from one of the Arizona-based publications calling DeAndre Hopkins selfish.
Right. It didn't end well in Houston, so that doesn't play in his favor.
Then why'd you trade for him? That's the thing.
Yeah.
Look, folks, especially at the receiver position, if you're trading for a guy who ultimately was unhappy where he was, there's a pretty good chance he's eventually going to be unhappy with you. So you know that going in. You shouldn't be surprised by it if it happens. You should chalk it up to experience. And it's not just receivers, other players can do that as well. I just feel like the Cardinals need, from a PR standpoint, to have a narrative out there that people will understand in the event that he goes somewhere else, has a great season, wins a Super Bowl, and people are saying, why did we just let this guy walk away for nothing?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a little bit of that set up. I think there's, probably some teams out there, or like we said, he has a reputation, but maybe some teams who are also in the hunt that are, maybe have released this information because their fan base expects them. Wait, we need a receiver and we need a DeAndre Hopkins. So that's a reason to have some negative stuff out there to go, oh, well, there was that stuff out there. We had to pump the brakes a little bit. Ultimately, you and I both know all this crap is not going to affect. If a team really has a need at the position and they evaluate their wide receiver room and go, okay, man, we need somebody else. We know how head coaches are. It doesn't matter who it is. If they need somebody, then they always go, well, I can make this work with this guy. I can fix it. So, and again, he's a football player. He's a wide receiver. Sometimes I feel like the diva-ness and him wanting the ball and just the attitude of a receiver can work against them later in their career. And that's where Hopkins is. He just left Superstarville, and now he's in good wide receiverville. And people don't want to deal with that kind of baggage. But I think he's probably at a point of his career like he wants to win and he wants to be paid. It's just a balance of that and how you're going to make that meet together. And I ask you, Mike, like, what do you think? What do you think DeAndre Hopkins legitimately can get on the open market right now where he is? We just saw the stats he had for the last 2 years. He's had the injuries, the PED, they're underwhelming stats. He is in year 10. What do you say? What say you the market for DeAndre Hopkins, you think?
Well, I think it's going to be similar to what we thought it would be for Odell Beckham Jr. until the Ravens decided, for reasons unrelated to football, that they were going to overpay him. And
Right.
I had an interview with Eric DeCosta, the Ravens GM, right after the draft, and he basically admitted that there are other reasons why you pay that $15 million guaranteed on a one-year deal to Odell Beckham Jr. So unless you get that mindset into play for a team that thinks DeAndre Hopkins is going to sell tickets and generate excitement and help you beyond the football field. If you're only looking at the football field, then it becomes kind of like what we thought, where there would be a certain amount of base salary with the opportunity to pile up more on top of it based upon production, based upon playing time, per game roster bonuses to guard against the possibility of injury keeping him from playing 5, 7, 10 games this year. It's not just, oh, boom, here's 20 million fully guaranteed, or boom, here's 15 million fully guaranteed. And the other thing too, and I don't rule this out, what you can do is, and this helps satisfy a guy's ego who just wants to be able to say, I got X many dollars this year. If you do a multi-year contract and you've got a signing bonus that gets spread over those multiple years,
Yeah.
you can say, I got my 20 million this year. Even if you're not making 20 million per year, I got my 20 million this year because they're paying me basically compensation in advance for year 2, year 3, year 4, maybe even year 5, if that's what it takes for him to get right now cash flow in 2023, what he's looking for. And then he can say, I'll worry about the other years later. If I have a big season, they'll have to give me more. I just want to get maximum now. And there's some merit to that because that's kind of how his most recent deal was structured. big money up front, less money future years.
Right.
We'll worry about the future years when the future years come.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that makes sense to what you're saying as far as the structure of that deal. I could see something like that being done. I think the interesting thing is just the wide receiver market in general, right? There's some guys that, hey, Odell Beckham Jr. conversation, like you talked about, $15 million 1 year, hasn't played football in a year, right? That was a little bit shocking, I think, to all of us. But where does he lie? There's the guys like Christian Kirk and Deontay Johnson who are making just a little north of $18 million a year. Mike Williams is making $20 million a year, right? You get down into Odell at 15, and then it drops to Corey Davis of the Jets at like 12.5. So is he going to be in that range with the incentives and, the signing bonus to where, okay, maybe he can make more? Or is somebody going to throw out the type of money like we're talking about where they're going to give him $18, $20 million a year and put him in Mike Williamsville? I don't think so. I certainly don't think he's as good a player as Mike Williams is right now from the Chargers, but we'll see. And I think it depends, again, like you said, the teams at the table, the market, and all of that goes along with it.
Well, remember when there were reports that Odell Beckham Jr. wanted $20 million a year? That was something that we chimed in on as an amount he was still targeting earlier this year. He pushed back on that. That never came out of my mouth, or whatever his tweet was.
You're right.
When you look at the stack of the highest paid receivers, 20 million isn't even top 15. It's right at the bottom of the top 15.
Right.
It's right there, Mike Williams. So where do you view yourself among the other receivers? That's really the question. And where does DeAndre Hopkins view himself, and how does he fit in to this overall structure? When you get past DJ Moore at 10, the next page of this graphic would have a bunch of guys right around 20, 11, 12, 13, 14,
Exactly.
15, right around 20.
Right.
And look, let's look at the production.
Yeah, let's just talk about that list right there. How does he compare to that list? What was your first thought when you looked at that list right there and you saw DeAndre Hopkins on it, right?
What's the problem? I don't know. Because now, I mean, obviously, yeah, that's gone. We can strike out number 3 because the contract's so 27.25 is dead. But okay, his first year in Arizona, 1,407 yards on 115 catches. But then it fell off. 10 games his second year in Arizona, 572 yards. 9 games last year, 717. That projects to 1,354 if you play the whole season, but he didn't. At the end of the day, he gave them 19 games over 2 full years and 1,200 yards over 2 full years. Not 1 year, 2 full years. That's not good enough to get you into the $20 million per year club. And again, what have you done for me lately? What do I expect you to do for me today? And what do I expect that you're going to do for me tomorrow? That's what matters. And that's where he's going to bump into a brick wall. It's why he wasn't traded, folks. Nobody wanted to take on $19.45 million this year.
Right.
So he's going to adjust his expectations downward. And if he's going to get into that stratosphere, he's going to have to produce. That's going to be, I think, the magic number here. Reasonable base, easily achieved incentives based on playing time and production. You turn the clock back to 2020 with 1,400 yards, or even 2018 with 1,572 his career high, you're going to get paid accordingly.
Right.
But you got to produce before we pay.
Yeah, I think it's like we've hit on here, the age, injuries, PEDs, not being able to practice all the time and managing his body and all that. That's going to scare teams. There's no doubt about that. And again, in totality, hey, DeAndre Hopkins is awesome. I mean, he's a legend of the sport. He's been one of the best receivers in our game, over the last 10 years or so. There's no doubting that. But where he is right now, he's not. And again, if we could put that list of guys up again, he's not in that category of players right there. Those are like, it's like when we talk about system quarterbacks, right? And I'm not saying this to be disrespectful by any stretch of the imagination. But to me, right, DeAndre Hopkins needs some sort of a system right now. The guys on that list right there, they just go, where do you want me to line up, coach? Just tell me who to beat. I'll do it. Oh, you want me to catch a slant and then run for a touchdown? No problem. You want me to get a reverse and run for a touchdown? No problem. speed sweep, screen pass, go deep for 80. And that, to me, is where the world changed for DeAndre Hopkins over the last, 3 years or so. He's never was the blazing type of receiver, but always had enough to scare you and keep you honest there. Now, yeah, he's more of a possession, big slot type of receiver, and not nearly as explosive as the guys we have on this list. I mean, you look at the guys on that list and you go 5 through 10 there, and you just go, well, they can score from anywhere on the field anytime they touch it. And that, to me, is why, yeah, I would think it's going to be somewhere along with what you're saying. Maybe just south of OBJ's contract. Maybe if it's multiple years, he gets a good guarantee that makes it look good and gets a big check this year, like you said, but have a hard time thinking that somebody's going to throw out there a legitimate $20 million a year average type of contract.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.